Ladies and gentlemen, please join us in welcoming to the Gathering of Eagles stage, General Chuck Horner.
Sir, we are honored to have you as one of our Eagles for GOE this year. As the CFAC of Desert Storm, can you please set the stage for what was asked of you prior to the beginning of the war?
What was the question?
Can you set the stage for what was asked of you prior to the war kicking off?
That I don't screw up. Well, General Schwarzkopf came in November of 79, or 89. And we talked, and he said, we're going to put CENTCOM out of business because we don't have anything to do. And I said, well, fine. He said, actually, there's a real threat. Iraq came out of the Iran-Iraq war poor with a huge military, and they're sitting right next to Kuwait, which has got money, and they need money. So he said, we need to orient the command towards Iraq invading Kuwait and Saudi Arabia. I said, fine. So we started planning at that time. Before that, we were always planning to stop the Russians from taking over a warm-water port in Iran. So it was a big change of direction. We had an exercise in July where we worked out what we'd do to halt an Iraqi invasion. And suddenly the intel started being the same as the real world, which is scary because most times intel people don't know what they're talking about. And it was a funny thing, he said, we were thinking, he said in November, he said, in the past, General Christ, who was a Marine, had given you the job as air component commander. And he said, I've decided to continue that. And I said, well, thank you very much. And I said, who's going to be the ground component commander? And he thought, because of the tension between the Marine Corps and the Army as to who's going to run things on the ground. And he said, I guess I will be. And I said, well, then I want you to understand something. I'm going to talk to you in a way that you don't appreciate. I'm going to have to point out things to you that make you look stupid. And because, quite frankly, you don't know how to fight air. And then you take that criticism and that struggle, and then you put on your unified commander's hat and make a decision, and that's what we'll do. I promise you that. And he said, okay. And he was always good that way.
You flew 2 tours in Vietnam. What lessons remained with you as you began planning for the Gulf War?
Vietnam was the greatest learning experience the military can have. A, don't get in a war that is essentially a civil war in which your dog in the fight is stopping communism. B, don't let the politicians in the Pentagon and in the White House and the Congress get involved in the actual execution of the war. Have them give you a military objective or a political objective that is achievable with military force. Then you get into things like rules of engagement. Rules of engagement are designed to protect the politician because bad things happen in war. And the military's got to tell the politicians, hey boy, if we go to war, bad things are going to happen. We're going to kill civilians. We're going to kill women and children. So get used to it. Don't try and stop it. And they tried to stop it with rules and being stupid. So one thing I determined that from President Bush, when we briefed him, he knew what he was doing. And he gave us a mission that was militarily achievable, liberate occupied Kuwait. And only rules he laid on us was fight as a coalition and keep the loss of life down. And he meant also enemy life. And so, believe me, those of us who are in Vietnam really responded to that.
Sir, who are some of the mentors that you looked up to?
Well, we've had great mentors. One of them just died last week, Bill Kirk. If you ever knew Bill Kirk, you probably knew the most innovative, creative, and great guy to work for. He never went to college. He got redlined off the BG list for something that he didn't do, but he took full responsibility for. was fired as a wing commander, and eventually led USAF with 4 stars. He had the job at 9th prior to me, and he taught me things like, take joy when good things happen to other people. You know, we in the military are very competitive people, and so if somebody gets promoted and we're not on that list, then sometimes we feel anger or we feel disappointment. And he taught me, take joy when good things happen to other people. So that was one of the big lessons he taught me. The other thing is, Bill Kirk was extremely smart and extremely lazy. He would sit there with his feet up on his desk, and I'm in the Pentagon working for him, and I'm all lathered up and running around and everything, and he'd just smile. And he knew I was doing his work for him, and he liked that. So probably the greatest guy in terms of changing things for the better was Bill Creech. He was a real pain in the ass. His visits to our bases we'd call creature feature, and after the horror stories. And one time he chewed me out because there wasn't a hook on the back door of the bathroom in the DV quarters where he could hang his bathrobe. I mean, nobody wears bathrobes. But he kept me around. I don't know why, because I'm the exact opposite. He's very neat and, you know, good looking, handsome, and everything. I'm just look like a sack of flour with a rope tied around it kind of person. And I think he kept me around is he'd run ideas and I'd argue with him. I always argued with him and I was always wrong. And I think what he kept me around for is if he could convince me, then anybody could get it. So, but he's worth studying. He had a book, TQM, or 5 Pillars of TQM. I said, "What? You never used the term TQM." He says, "Oh, that's the current buzz phrase. I had to use it to sell the book." So, but he really changed things for the better. And he was absolutely 100% interested in readiness. Everything he did was towards readiness. And if our accident rate got too low, he'd start to worry because we weren't training hard enough. Things like that. You don't find people like that in the military anymore. They're there, but we got to find them.
So with over 60 international officers in the audience and ACSD students who may be serving as part of a coalition in the Middle East, what some unique challenges or rewarding experiences could you impart on us from your time?
Well, the key to coalition is having respect for one another. Every nation's a sovereign nation. And in the Gulf War, we had a lieutenant colonel from Canada. We had a 3-star from Saudi Arabia. We had a colonel from Kuwait. And every night, we'd all sit around, a 2-star from England, a 1-star from France. We'd sit around the table twice a day at changeover in the command center. And everybody spoke with equal voice. Now, it's easier for airmen to do coalition than anybody. First of all, we all spoke English, because English is the language of aviation. And second of all, rank has very little importance to airmen. The flight lead is in charge, and it may be a second lieutenant, it may be a colonel. And the wingman follows the flight lead, and it might be a colonel on the wing. And normally he'll let the second lieutenant be in charge until he screws up, and then he'll say, "You're out of here." But so we have respect for individuals, and we speak the same language. We tend to think the same. So it's much easier for airmen than, say, ground guys, who are completely different. The head French guy in Desert Storm didn't speak English. And Sir Peter de la Billière, the head of the English contingent, walked into the room, and the French general went berserk. "Oh, de Billière," he started babbling French. Well, de Billière's ancestors came over in the Battle of Hastings, 1688. And so Sir Peter looked down at him and says, "I'm sorry, mate, I don't speak a bloody word."
So this week is a very unique opportunity for each of us with having such great leaders, military leaders, speak to us. What lessons do you want to impart on this ACSC class as we move out next week and back to the field?
I don't think I can teach these people anything. They've sat in this room and been bombarded by the brightest minds in the world, and they thought, "Boy, what a bunch of horse manure." Just go be yourself and do your thing, and you'll succeed.
All right, sir, at this time, we will open it up to questions from the class.
And now, the spring butts get to stand up and ask their questions. Come on, cowards.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you have questions, you can move to the side microphones.
There's the designated mort right there.
Morning, sir. Major Clayton from Seminar 18. My question is, what's your most rewarding leadership experience that you've had in your career?
Being a father. Yeah. Yeah. I've always had fun. I tell you, have fun. If you're not having fun, get out of the military. It's got to be fun. Life's too short. And so I've had jobs where I had people that I didn't like I worked for, and I sort of gutted through those. I had jobs where I worked with the most wonderful people in the world, and I loved that. But at the end of the day, the thing that's most important in your life is your family. So learn about that. Don't put them overboard for getting ahead in the career. Come on, you got to get up faster and talk faster.
General,
Yeah.
Major Davenport, Flight 28.
Okay.
As an aviator, can you share with us one of your most memorable experiences, either in combat or flying?
Well, I really love combat because there's nothing better than to be shot at and missed. And of course, it all comes to crashing. We had guys get shot down, and they'd get picked up and come back, and they'd have trouble holding a drink for some reason. So I never had the privilege of being shot down, so to me it was always fun. But it changed. We had one guy, he was on his 90th mission, got shot down, picked up, brought back, and so he said, I don't want to fly strike anymore. He says, can I fly with the Weasels? We always put a single seat on the wing of 1 and 3. And so we said, sure. He says, you guys have it easy. So we'd always go in ahead of the strike package and try and suppress the radars. And then strike package come in, and then we'd wait around, then we'd come back and try and get them to shoot at us so we could find them. And so he goes on this mission, and we go in, and we're going fast. We're going over 600. Going in, and of course the radar's all shut down. We start pointing at them. And there comes strike package, and then they come back out. So now we're going, and we're trying to get the SAM sights to come up. And on this one, we get a Dr. Pepper. That's a sight at 10, 2, and 4. And suddenly they all shoot. So we had 16 missiles coming up in that particular mission. He came back and he says, I want to get back in the strike business. So. But combat is the most fun there is. It doesn't get any better than that. Yeah.
Good morning, General. Thanks for coming and taking part in this.
Yeah.
This Major Haney, Flight 32.
Don't suck up.
So we've read a lot of books this year, and a lot of the books and speakers suggest that during Vietnam, some of the problems that were within the Air Force was that a focus on the strategic mission caused the tactical mission to lose focus in training and resources. Today we have some issues where maybe a focus on the insurgent fight or has caused us to lose focus on some of the strategic stuff. What lessons can we learn from your era and that transition from Vietnam to the end of the Cold War that could help us today?
Well, the first one thing I want you to take away from me is don't ever use the term strategic and tactical because it confuses things, and they mean different things to different people. But there's no doubt about it, SAC got the money when I came in the Air Force. For the first 3 years I was flying in an operational unit, I had one flying suit, and it had both arms ripped off in having fun and games in the bar, and so just sewed them up. Well, I looked like Frankenstein with all these seams sewed on my suit. And that, of course, changed in '65 when we started getting interested in conventional war. And as a result, we had this huge buildup. The way we do things, and you're in it right now. You're going through the dry spell in the military budgets. We went through the dry spell in the fighter business in the 50s. And then we go to the glut, where we got everything. We became everything. SAC got nothing. it's feast or famine in the military. Get used to it. It's the way we do business in democracy. It sucks. It's the poorest way to do business, but it's reality. So get used to reality. And now we're on the upswing again, and you're going to get stuff you never got before. You're going to get flying time you never got before. You're going to get fuel, parts, things like that. Desert Storm happened to occur at the peak of readiness of the military because Reagan pumped all that money in the early 80s, and it takes a decade in order to spend it, get it right. And we had all this new equipment, new capability just coming into the inventory. And Desert Storm, we looked really good. And you're on the upswing now, so congratulations, because you've been through the drought, the trough. I don't know whether I answered the question or not. I forget the question is. It's trouble with being old. And you're here to study ancient history called the Gulf War.
Good morning, General.
Yes.
Major, over here, sir.
Yeah, there you go.
Major Jeremy Sexton from Flight 18 and JSTARS Navigator. Based on your experiences working with our allies, what, if any, planning procedures, systems management, or execution methods that you feel we should emulate or incorporate into the way we do business?
Man, that's a school question right there, isn't it? Jerry O'Malley said, when you go to a dance with the one that brung you. And what he's telling young colonels who are going to be generals, don't change the way you do business. Americans are free people. We're free thinkers. Air Force people tend to be a little obnoxious because we're really free. But the point is this, just be yourself always, whether it's within the service, within your marriage, within working with the coalition. And I could never negotiate with the Arabs because they're masters at it. That's their whole life. The game is more important than the product in terms of that's the way they're brought up. So when I was dealing with a Saudi or a Kuwaiti or Bahraini or UAE guy or Oman, I'd just say, I'm sorry, Ahmed, that's the best I can do. And I'd just stop. I couldn't negotiate. Well, it would make them angry, but they understood that I was a fool and I wasn't going to get in a game with them. And so there's things like that. Just always be yourself, whoever you are. And the same with dealing with your subordinates. All of us have worked for people who one day are a good guy, the next day they're an animal. And it's really frustrating, and it ruins a unit. So if you're an animal, just be an animal. Everybody's used to that. They can handle it. If you're really a nice person, just be a nice person all the time. And, when you fire them, smile. But Americans, we're highly respected, but people are wary of us because we do come on like a thunderstorm. And so when you're in a coalition, people will allow you to lead because they recognize the command and control you bring, all the things that they don't have. On the other hand, don't ever act like you're in charge, because you start doing that and they'll chuck you overboard in a heartbeat. So just be yourself and be humble, and particularly if you're a fighter pilot, which is impossible, be humble and just listen to people and get along. Yeah, approaching a mic. Or he's going to the bathroom. How come they put the mic so far away? Is this PT?
Morning, sir. Bob Johnson from Flight 19. Can you talk about a failure that maybe you couldn't fix, but had to bounce back from, and how you did it?
My wife would tell you it's our marriage. We did a lot of things in Desert Storm that we did poorly. Intelligence exploitation, we've done poorly. And I don't think I can fix that, but the intel community can if they start allowing their people to make mistakes and to quit trying to get promoted, that kind of stuff. Desert Storm, we hit a bunker that was used as an air raid shelter. It was a horrible thing, and I felt terrible about it, but life goes on. So in your life, you're going to have a lot of mistakes and a lot of errors. Bill Creech always allowed us to have mistakes. He would never allow us to have breaking a law, doing something for yourself. He just was death on that. But I made a lot of mistakes, and he'd say, "Hi, if you make it again, you're fired." I'd say, "Understand." And so learn to live with mistakes. And quite frankly, I had some very deep depression moments. We'd have an aircraft accident, kill a couple of people, and I'd have to take it on myself as my fault. And I could have made excuses about it, said, well, they shouldn't have been flying in that weather, or I wasn't there, or something like that. But if you don't take responsibility for things that happen, then you're really not worth it. You got to take responsibility for bad things that happen. Bill Kirk, when he got redlined off the BG list and fired and sent to 9th Air Force as the DO, I was the DO up at Seymour Johnson, the 4th Wing. So I had to go down there for something, and I went down there, and I go over to his house for dinner, and I loved Bill Kirk. And so I wanted to make him feel good, and I said, boy, did you get a raw deal. Because the reason he got fired is because he wouldn't fire a squadron commander. And the reason he wouldn't fire him